Hi, I'm Steve Pleich, and welcome to this edition of Voices from the Village. Tonight we'll be talking about the Santa Cruz River Walk, recreation and preservation. Very important issues in town, and I think very important in terms of how we view our river and how we're able to enjoy it. I have with me a returning guest and a friend of the river, Greg Pepping, the Executive Director of the Coastal Watershed Council. Greg, welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start talking about the river walk and the things that you're planning for that.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Happy that people are hearing folks talk about the river and other people are talking about the river. Mm-hmm. I'm the Executive Director of the Coastal Watershed Council. The Coastal Watershed Council has been around since 1995. I've been there since 2008. Oh, wow. And our mission is to preserve and protect coastal watersheds, so all the watersheds that drain to Monterey Bay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Preserve and protect coastal watersheds through stewardship, education, and monitoring. And we have, as one of our flagship projects, our main flagship project, focusing on the San Lorenzo River. And I can tell you many aspects of what that includes. But
well, I look forward to it. I'd like to show a short video before we start, just to kind of remind people, you know, what a rich, vibrant treasure the San Lorenzo River itself is. So let's take a look at that very brief clip, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Due to the overabundance of rain that California's had this winter, you see an overabundance of sour grass, mustard, as well as our state flower, which, in case you're not familiar with California's state flower, turns out it is the orange California poppy. Beautiful day here in Santa Cruz, California, as you can see. Some gorgeous clouds in the sky. Sun is out. It's really pretty here.
Well, that's a wonderful, very short clip of the Santa Cruz River Walk. And I know that one of the initiatives that you're advocating now is some increased recreation out on the river itself. You know, this is not new. You know, I was looking at a little the back history of it. I saw a picture of from the Sentinel of Hillary Bryant on a paddleboard in 2014. Last year, he had a very successful paddle-in out there, as I recall. So where are we now?
on the paddling specifically?
Yes, indeed.
There's an ordinance that's been on the books since 1982 that says you have to have a special permit to get on the water with a kayak, a canoe, a stand-up paddleboard. And when we started exploring how to reconnect a healthy watershed to a vibrant community through a variety of ways, when we started exploring that a couple years ago, we learned about this ordinance. It was interesting to find the history of it. It took some sleuthing and some head-scratching for a lot of folks to find out why that's on the books. But it's one of those laws that's been on the books for a long time, and we kind of forget about it. We had a special permit in partnership with the city of Santa Cruz to hold a series of events, and we would have a permit to get 50 people out on the water. And a lot of folks enjoyed that. There were kayaks, canoes, stand-up paddleboards. A lot of people loved that, and we had one after the other about once a month for a while. And it was a love fest. People just permagrin. People loving the river. People from the bridges up above and the Riverwalk path, levee paths, hollering down saying, how are you doing this? You know, how'd you get to do this? Keep it up. Yet, as we continued it, some folks also expressed a concern that those boats were scaring the birds away and impacting bird habitat. So the conversation evolved and matured into City Council in June of last year deciding to have a 2-year study. Last year, count birds during the fall, and this year, count birds while allowing some paddling. And then it's kind of a comparison to the baseline. And that's a way to see, okay, is paddling affecting the birds?
And let me interrupt you there just for a second. Now, you are raising money, the Coastal Watershed Council itself is raising money to do these impact studies. So tell people how they can help out, because one of the wonderful things about community television is we get to help out our friends on things like this. So let them know, and we'll talk about that a couple of different times of how they can help financially make contributions to help this good work.
Okay. thanks for the chance. 'Cause
Absolutely, sure.
Because we always do say that everyone has a role. When we talk about reconnecting the community to the river, everybody has a role. We're raising $32,000 to hire a biologist to do year 2 of the study. The city paid for year 1, and they've asked us to pay for year 2. Have a biologist out there and watch the paddlers. Are they following the rules? Watch the birds. What's the impact? So people can go to coastal-watershed.org.
Okay.
And there's an orange donate button there
Great.
at
Fantastic.
coastal-watershed.org.
Right.
And they can help us in the effort to figure out, is paddling okay? How is it impacting birds?
Right.
And is that something we should consider, like a lot of other communities, or does it have a negative impact?
Yeah.
And that's what we're learning as a community together.
And I led with that because I'm really fascinated about the idea of being able to recreate and have people really enjoy the San Lorenzo River itself. But I don't mean to limit the good work that you've done. There are several different things going on: habitat preservation, bringing more focus to the river itself. During the paddle outs, whatnot. Tell us about your community partners and kind of what you're doing with that.
Okay. One of the big things that we've always been good at and been known for is water quality monitoring, citizen science. Right. So adults particularly, kids too, but adults particularly learn by doing. So we have a lot of opportunities to let people get out and get their feet wet, get their hands wet, do water quality monitoring to test the pH, the turbidity, the nutrient loads, the bacterial levels, all of that, dissolved oxygen, as citizen scientists. And you don't need to know how to do that. We'll train people.
Yeah.
We have events that include all levels of ages and family members. A superhero cape event where kids get to make a costume and bike along the river.
Beautiful.
A tree identification day. There are bird walks, and we have, you mentioned the partners that we have something called the San Lorenzo River Alliance, and that is in partnership with the city, the county, the Resource Conservation District, Valley Women's Club. There's some non-environmental groups in it. The Arts Council Santa Cruz County, Santa Cruz Chamber, and then on some of the work groups we have Save Our Shores, the Museum of Art and History.
One of my favorite groups, of course. I'm a sanctuary steward of Save Our Shores, so I love them.
As am I.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
They do great work.
Brother stewards.
Yeah. And Santa Cruz Natural History Museum is also involved, and others that I'm not naming. What we've been trying to do is broaden the conversation about the river. People really like learning about the history of the river. And in 1769, European settlers, European explorers came here and found native people living by the river, and that was when Santa Cruz started as a community because of the San Lorenzo River. And we built by the river and got flooded out, and then for decades stayed up on high ground.
Right.
Eventually, we were seduced by the river and came back down, and we've had this boom and bust relationship with flood and rebuild. And then when the levees came in 1955, that changed everything. So we are a community that is disconnected from the river.
Absolutely, yeah.
Visually, psychologically, and emotionally. So we're trying to rebuild that connection.
And I really think that it's an appropriate time to do so. This is the 150th anniversary, the sesquicentennial of Santa Cruz. I think it's a wonderful time to revitalize, to kind of recognize, to reintroduce ourselves to the city. I've for a long period of time, and I'm not someone who's lived in Santa Cruz for decades, as many before, but I've been here for the last 15 or 16 years, and it's always been my observation that there really isn't much focus on the river. There's no river-facing businesses. I noticed that recently City Council has had some initiatives to put some lighting in, to do some things. Wonderful work that I think more recently is being done is your ebb and flow projects with the Arts Council. Tell us a little bit. That's fascinating.
Ebb and Flow was a few weeks ago. It was the second year of the Ebb and Flow River Arts Festival. And that's an opportunity to get people that love the river to appreciate some art down there.
Right.
And to get arts lovers to get to the river, and vice versa, if I said that right. And there was a kinetic sculpture parade. There's already funding secured for next year that will be the biggest, the third annual, likely to be in June. We don't have a date yet, but Arts Council Santa Cruz County is leading that. And that's it. I mean, there are a lot of creative people in this community. And that's really what we need, is a creative conversation about how to reconnect different aspects of the community to the river. It's forgotten, and we have the beaches and the ocean and the redwoods and the mountains.
Right.
So it's a missed opportunity for the river, but it remains an opportunity to some modest river-facing development, more recreation, definitely better habitat and water quality, and we're trying to play a role in all of that at the Coastal Watershed Council.
And I think just nature is playing its part as well, because when I walked across the Soquel Street Bridge, we're in our new studios on Soquel Avenue, I see how much water there is in the river. There's a tremendous amount of water in the river. So people can notice that, my gosh, it's not as, a small stream kind of flowing through Santa Cruz. It's going to go out and there's the ocean, river mouth. It's really a very broad, beautiful body of water. That people, I think, are noticing and really saying to themselves, geez, how can I enjoy that more? What's there that's drawing me to the habitat, the flora, the fauna, the ability just to go down there and enjoy the river?
Yeah, and when the Army Corps of Engineers came in the 50s, after a big flood, the flood of 55, 3 to 4 feet of river water going down Pacific Avenue.
Oh, brother. Yeah.
I've read about, and destroyed homes and claimed lives and destroyed businesses. So when that flood control project came in with federal dollars, there were strings attached. Right. So today, the city has constraints by the Army Corps of Engineers on how they can manage the river, Fish and Wildlife and others. So you talked about a lot of water in the river.
Right.
It's seasonally it backs up and the lagoon closes. So when we see a lot of water in the San Lorenzo, it can be because of high flow, or it could be because the river mouth is closed.
Right.
That's one of the city's top priorities right now, is managing that flow, because it's seeping. It doesn't, the levees are keeping it in the river, but it also seeps into groundwater and basements and causes problems.
And there has to be a certain speed of flow per cubic yard or whatever it is before we can take water out of the river to make sure we have water for drink, that kind of thing.
Right, and we get water out of upstream of here at Tate Street and Felton Diversion. And,
exactly. Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is that, one of the few good things of the drought is that people started to pay attention more to rivers and water and their water supply. And so I always like to take the opportunity to point out the San Lorenzo River in most years is half of our drinking water supply. So over 90,000 water customers in the city of Santa Cruz.
Right, exactly.
Half of it is the San Lorenzo River, and if you count Loch Lomond, Newell Creek is a tributary to the river.
What they call the North Coast streams are contributing to that water supply?
They are, yeah. And so if you count Newell Creek, Loch Lomond, then it's 2/3 of our drinking water source, along with a little bit of groundwater, and then the North Coast streams.
Yeah. So one of the things that we were mentioning earlier that you thought our viewers might be interested in is issues coming before the Planning Commission, of which you are a member. And they do impact directly our ability to use and appreciate and really incorporate the river back into our daily lives. So tell us a little bit about that.
If you can, a lot of the viewers will be able to picture standing on the Santa Cruz Riverwalk levee path, and those buildings on Front Street have their backs facing to the river. Yeah. So what is being discussed at the Planning Commission, and then this will go to City Council, is an amendment to the downtown plan. After the earthquake in '89, it took a couple of years, and then we had this downtown recovery plan. Recognizing that we've recovered, it's now going to be called the downtown plan. And that says how will we build, where and when and how, not so much when, but what will happen downtown, including along Front Street facing the Riverwalk. So if you're standing on the Riverwalk path, looking down that slope of the levee, and then you're looking at the back of a building, and maybe some not so great activity is happening there now, you could build that building, replace that building with a couple of story building, and then fill that area in. So you'd have a flat area that could be more of a park. And then maybe that's a cafe. Maybe that's a patio with an ice cream shop, or a restaurant, a cafe. Right. And a lot of people get excited about what they've seen in other communities, urban riverwalks that are a draw.
Well, the obvious analogy people draw is, look at San Antonio, what a wonderful thing they have there. Of course, we are not San Antonio, but nevertheless, I think there are probably some lessons to be learned from, how they're able to do what they do there, and very successfully.
People get excited about the San Antonio Riverwalk, and then some people get worried about that. It's pretty commercial. Maybe we don't want that here. I think most people in the community agree we can do better, and the timing is right with the business cycle and a chance to, if you really imagine if that Riverwalk was transformed it would genuinely transform this community. It
Oh,
would
no,
change Santa Cruz.
There is absolutely no question in my mind about that. And I think it will also connect downtown Santa Cruz with the kind of Ocean Street, the kind of courthouse building, all of that, which seems disconnected. You know, it's the
does.
counties over there and the cities here, and kind of never the twain shall meet. But I think you really to develop that, as a bridge between those two things, and there's so much room to do that, so much ability to do that,
Right.
and so many smart people, who can think about projects. And let me ask you this: on the Planning Commission, and you're talking about the changing ordinances, laws, procedures. Has anyone yet come in with ideas about, geez, I think I'd like to build something here? Any kind of even a fantasy proposal saying, you know what, I'd like to put a building here and do that?
That's in the works.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that is, those conversations are happening.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you talked about connecting other parts.
Absolutely.
The San Lorenzo Urban River Plan, which is a 2003 plan, a 20-year document for how can we improve the habitat and the recreation values and the aesthetics and safety of the river. It talks about what you just said,
right.
reconnecting the Riverwalk and the river to different neighborhoods. So you could have the Riverwalk be an extension of downtown.
Yeah.
You could connect it to the east side. And we do a lot of work with Nueva Vista Community Center, getting kids from
Great folks.
Lower Ocean and Beach Flats neighborhoods to realize that river right there is a place they can play on and near and commute to work and to school and to church.
Yeah, I mean, it's virtually their backyard, but again, building a more inclusive community is what
Right.
we're talking about. And,
Exactly.
and I think a lot of people, really are of a view that we need to be more inclusive. And if we can be inclusive in our infrastructure, how we lay out our city, then I think that it goes a long way toward, being inclusive in our thoughts and our culture and our shared dreams. One thing I've always been fascinated about was, and now they've built the Performing Arts Center out at the Tannery, and they got the Tannery Arts Center. That also is kind of seemingly away from the city, and yet it's connected by the San Lorenzo River. Yeah.
Right, and we're looking at little nodes, little dots along
Yeah.
the river like that. You have bookends, if you could imagine the Harvey West neighborhood, Plantronics down there, the Tannery
Right.
at one end of the lower river, and then the boardwalk
Yeah.
at the other. You have the county building and some others, and you just connect those dots.
Yeah.
And that's all in the lower river. I mean, this river is over 30 miles long, starting up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So not to forget all of the watershed concept and all the work
Right.
happening upstream.
So tell us something then about the work that you were doing work all along the river. So you are working on impacts that may happen farther up the river than just in Santa Cruz.
With our partners we are, but
Yeah.
we're focused on the lower river
Oh, yeah.
because we feel like there's an opportunity to reconnect people to the river in the city of Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
The Resource Conservation District, the Valley Women's Club, who I forgot to mention is in the Alliance. They do great work. Valley Women's Club, the Resource Conservation District, the county, and others are doing a lot of work upstream,
Yeah.
and sometimes we're working up there with them, but we're really focused as the Coastal Watershed Council on the lower river. The Valley, San Lorenzo Valley residents do identify with the river more. Whereas down here, we might walk across the bridge,
Right.
we might drive over the bridge,
Yeah.
and not think of the river.
Right.
And so we're trying to change that mindset.
And certainly you go up even just a little farther north, and Felton has a park right next to the river.
Right.
They have that, I don't know whether it's a covered bridge, whether it's a bridge that goes across. I mean, it's incorporated right in the town, and so certainly you go to Boulder Creek or Ben Lomond, it's all about the river. And so they have that natural connection that we don't have so much, and yet we can have that if we put the work in. And it's wonderful that we have all the community partners who are willing to do that.
Right. I mean, if these ideas have been around for a while.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody likes most of the ideas. We realize that if it was easy, it'd be done by now.
Right.
We recognize that as the Coastal Watershed Council, we're one small organization. There's only so much we can do, and it takes all those partners. Everybody's been working on the river, some of these groups, for decades and
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just optimizing that, finding more resources, identifying gaps, and avoiding duplication so we all work well together. And that's one of the efforts that we've led under the San Lorenzo River Alliance.
So in terms of impact on habitat, you said there was a previous study done, and now there's going to be another one done. There'll be a baseline to compare the two. How will you be able to determine what impact, if any, there is on the local habitat and biodiversity in terms of maybe more recreational use?
So back to the paddling conversation.
Exactly.
A lot of aspects of of habitat, but specifically on the paddling thing, Gary Kittleson is a biologist that really is kind of the go-to guy when the city wants to study something on the river.
Right.
He's the guy that's been hired for year 1. He'll be hired for year 2 if we raise the money, if we're able to. We're doing well.
And again, you can contribute to that effort by...
Coastal Watershed Council, coastalwatershed.org.
Okay, good.
And thank you for the plug.
Absolutely, sure.
And thanks for that, because that's, I mean, if we do this, we need to do it the right way. Just about every river you can name, you can paddle. And you can't do that in Santa Cruz. So I've really scratched my head about this as we've gone through the process and thought, is this good? Is it the right thing?
Right.
And I still believe there's a way we can do this the right way. And that's what this funding will do, is go to help Gary and a colleague of his get out there.
Yeah.
And what we've learned during the first paddles that we talked about is that 50 boats on the river probably is too many. Most of us agree about that. But you can't paddle the river. So you have to wait for a special opportunity and then a bunch of people. What's perhaps a better idea is that you could go tomorrow, Steve.
Yeah.
I could go the next day.
Right.
The next day there might be nobody, and the next day 3 people.
Right.
So we don't know how popular it will be, and that
Right.
may be a challenge that we'll have to manage down the road. But it is illegal, and bird watchers want to go to the river. A grandma wants to walk with her grandkid along the river. A businessman wants to take a walk on lunch. And some people want to paddle it. Everybody ought to be able to do that. It is not one subgroup's river. It is all of our river as a community. And that's what we're trying to figure out with this study is can we add that element, the paddling?
Is there any thought to have some kind of a very low-level permitting process with people who want to come up, like buying a fishing license or something to go out for one day? So I want to go paddle, and I go over to City Hall and make it a streamlined process so it doesn't take all week to do it. But to be able to limit use in some way that's to be able to be taken,
That's been discussed, and that's not in the plans right now.
Yeah.
We may need to get there, depending on how popular it is. I didn't finish my thought on the...
Please do, yeah.
And I interrupted myself about one of the things we've learned. Some of the things we've learned...
Tell me, Greg, what are one of the things you learned?
We have learned during those pilot events that we probably had too many people on the river, so do fewer. And we learned that going upstream of SoCal Avenue, where the river narrows, that's probably too narrow, because then you're really close to the bank on either side, and perhaps scaring away birds. We learned that during certain times of the year, you're disrupting nesting and breeding seasons. And so we tried to optimize this with a bunch of different community voices to talk about where to go and where not to go, when to paddle and when not to, how to behave when you're on the water. And we'll continue to learn, but that's when we do the pilot this fall, and biologists are out there to observe paddlers and birds, they'll continue that learning process.
And I don't think anyone would mind if they had the opportunity to paddle on the river. A very short introductory class on etiquette and a little bit of training stuff, just to paddling safety. I don't think anybody really minds that kind of thing, because they're getting to enjoy that. I think it's like surfers; they have their etiquette. They're out on the water, and for everybody to be able to enjoy that particular wave, you got to learn how to share. You got to learn how to be safe about it. And the same is true when you have a limited space with people who want to enjoy that.
Right, and those are good comparisons. We can go for a hike and trash the trail, or we can manage it responsibly. Same for surfing, going to the beach, and that will be a challenge. We'll have to figure that out going forward.
Well, while we're talking about paddling, and I do want to talk about some other things while I have you here, let's take a look at a clip we have. It's just a couple of minutes of actually somebody paddling. Here's the Santa Cruz River Walk.
play it.
So, that I was asking Greg. So that's kind of what it's like being out there on the river. You were saying we were looking for a landmark when we were looking at the clip earlier, and you were saying it looks like it was Highway 1 that they were getting in up there. So,
Well, as we watched that, I couldn't hear the video. I don't know if that would have helped. But when you asked me if that's a fair representation of what we're proposing, it's not, in fact, because if I saw that right, that was, they put in by the Highway 1 pedestrian bridge.
okay.
So that was one problem. One of the things we learned is to put in lower. And so we're proposing the pilot will be from Soquel Avenue Bridge down to the boardwalk, down to the river mouth.
Okay.
So just a part of the river to avoid nesting. The other thing is the video showed people traipsing around the river, and
Right.
we would want to avoid that.
Exactly.
So, and that's one of the reasons we wouldn't be in that area, to
Yeah.
avoid that. And so we'll put in at certain places and take out at certain places, avoid certain parts of the river. And some of what you saw there actually will not be included.
So it was a good example of what not to do. So,
Right.
So folks, when you're watching that, that's not what Greg has in mind, or this wonderful program that I got going. One of the things I did want to mention is, along with Ebb and Flow, you've got Pause in the Park that's being done. Is now that's going to be on July 17. We're actually going to have put that on the screen so people know. Tell us a little bit about that. That's wonderful.
Well, the whole effort is about getting different people to the river for different reasons, and some folks are really, pets are like family members.
Right. Of course.
For those folks, where do they walk their dogs? It has to be on leash, and if they do that, they can enjoy the river while taking their dog to the river walk. So we have events for dog walkers to go along the river and appreciate it, and so that's called Pause in the Park.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I can recall there were some folks for a while taking bike rides along the river walk, and some things, just kind of that community spirited, spontaneous, let's get out and do something and enjoy this part, of what basically is downtown.
Right. And all of those are examples of positive pro-social activity. At any given time, the Riverwalk is a mixture of social behavior, and some folks say that it's not welcoming to them. Some folks say it's not inviting, it doesn't feel safe. So how do you do that? How do you fix that? And that's not an easy thing to do. No. Our approach is not an anti-anything campaign. It's a pro-positive behavior, fun, family-friendly activities. And then eventually, it will be a place that feels more like Westcliff, perhaps. A place that is more of a draw. And eventually, when you have friends and family visiting, you might say, hey, let's take them to the Riverwalk.
Right.
Let's take them to this place we're proud of. And for some folks, it feels like a back alley. Instead of a back alley, it could be our front yard. It could be a great urban park.
Well, and I think it would not be treated as, it would not be considered a back alley if it weren't treated that way. And I think, it's everybody's has some ownage about, why that's taken place. Those of us who are community organizers, people that see something that should be incorporated more downtown, then I should be out doing something as a volunteer, as a community member. You are doing yours, with all the various organizations, community partners you have, with the Planning Commission, with the city. So it's wonderful that there is organization and mobilization on that level,
Right, and you mentioned volunteers. We give people a lot of opportunities to volunteer, remove invasive species, water quality monitoring, help us educate people about the drinking water source, and water quality, and other things. One other thing that popped into my head about the video was that one thing that was representative of the paddling conversation we're having is, I was struck by how pretty the river is when you're there. How cool it is, how big it is, bigger than you think. If you can imagine you're standing on Front Street, like by the credit union or the 418 project.
India Joe's, of course.
India Joe's, yeah. You can't see the river. Right. Similarly, when you're on the water, you can't see what's going on Front Street. So you forget, in a really cool way, you forget what's going on in Santa Cruz. And you could be going under one of the bridges, and it's cool acoustics under there. It's quiet and peaceful. And both of us have phones.
Yeah.
You have 2 gadgets there. I have another one in my bag.
That's right.
That's what we do now. We're connected to technology. That's our lives. And we have this ribbon of green going right through town.
Yeah.
That is an opportunity to reconnect with nature, to slow down, to reset. And so many of us are restored by those experiences. We can do that at the San Lorenzo River. And that feeds our soul. That can really help us. Really, it'll improve the quality of life for a lot of people, I think.
And I was telling you that our friend Gray Hayes was here a while back, and he at that point was affiliated with the Elkhorn Slough, and now he's the orchard manager for the Molina Farming Collective in Davenport. Great guy. But anyway, the show we did was about biodiversity and how rich our biodiversity is in Santa Cruz, and no less so on our riverway. And the Santa Cruz River Walk. And for people to get out there and to appreciate, the variousness, the beauty, the vibrancy of all that is kind of what we'd like to have people feel welcome to do. And not saying, gosh, I got to walk across the bridge, I got to go to the county building, I've just got to get across there as quick as I can. Why not linger and say, oh, look at that, I know what that is, that bush, that bird, that thing, whatever it is, that raise that educational value of it, is important. And I know that's part of what you were doing as well.
We do, and I should mention, since you talk about education, specifically youth education too, from Boulder Creek all the way down to Beach Flats, we're working with schools, with community centers, with after-school clubs, and through summer camps. And we get kids out there to learn about nature, about their water supply, about birds and bugs and fish.
Right.
And if any, for me and for you and for any viewer, to imagine the first experience you had where you really started paying attention to nature, when you got hooked, your mom or dad took you fishing, or an uncle took you on a camping trip, or your grandma showed you this bird over there. Just getting more experiences like that for kids, more often and earlier in life, and hook them so that they realize what nature is to our daily lives.
And my recollection is, as being a kid and being introduced to that, wasn't the macrocosmic effect of it, it was the microcosmic, just looking down into a pool of water or something and seeing the stuff moving around, or how wonderful nature was right at your fingertips. And that's the kind of thing that we introduce a child, a young person to, that it stays with them their whole lives. And maybe we can develop a generation of people who have a real understanding, appreciation. Those are going to be the volunteers in the years to come that are going to really continue to bring this vibrancy to the river that we'd like to see.
Right. I mean, we're focusing on kids and really showing kids their leadership voice. And one of the things our education coordinator, Molly Bain, talks about is not investing in kids so that they can do good one day, so that they can have power one day, but helping them realize how they can make a difference right now.
Right.
So connecting them to nature and letting them see how they can be leaders amongst their peers and with their families. So that's all part of our youth education work.
Yeah, and I know that through my work with Save Our Shores, when we would have the stewards would lead beach and river cleanups, and that's kind of was my first introduction actually to the river, is doing many river cleanups that I've done over time, and we come to appreciate that. And it's different than the beach, and yet it's the same thing that you're doing. It's the same thing you're introducing to the kids that you were stewarding, to be stewards of not only the National Marine Sanctuary, but also the San Lorenzo River, that there is a connection there. Yeah.
And Save Our Shores gathers a lot of data for their beach trash efforts. But not beach trash efforts, but beach cleanups efforts. And they've figured out that the San Lorenzo River is a source of trash. So that's why they've gone upstream from the beach and do, with a lot of community partners, do beach river cleanups rather.
Yeah.
We did one, Coastal Watershed Council did one with the Warriors. We had the coach and players out
right?
there, season ticket holders out there. So again, just getting different elements of the community to the river and helping people rediscover, or for some people, discover it for the first time.
And while we're talking about volunteerism, and of course we want to mention how people can contribute to the Coastal Watershed Council's efforts to fund these impact studies. Do you have regular classes for your stewards through the Coastal Watershed Council?
We don't have them regular like the sanctuary stewards. We have more sporadic opportunities.
Okay.
Certain times of the year we have more opportunities for water quality monitoring, or water tours that we call them.
Yeah.
And all of that's at sanlorenzoriver.org or coastal-watershed.org, and at coastal-watershed.org is where they can contribute to the paddling and habitat study for birding impacts that we're working on.
So now what's going to be our timeline here? You're going to raise some money to get this impact study done, and then how long is this going to take? How long will it take to analyze the results? When will it be returned to whatever commission or body or thing that'll pass it on to whoever will be a decision maker at some point?
So the 2-year approach was approved by City Council at the recommendation of an advisory group. And the advisory group including birding enthusiasts, paddling enthusiasts, biologists, citizens, and some city staff. So a 2-year thing. Last year, count the birds. This year, count the birds and watch the paddling behavior and compare those two. We'll raise $32,000. We need to do that by the end of July.
Okay.
$32,000 to pay for year 2. And I'll describe this conservatively so we can under-promise and over-deliver.
Of course.
I think it'll take a couple of months for the biologist to work up a report, and then it'll come back to City Council, and it'll be basically staff at the city manager's office saying, all right, Council, this is the implementation of your order to do this 2-year thing, and these are the findings we have from the biologist. Council then has to decide, okay, based on this additional information, we have a lot of information, and this is one more piece. What are we going to do with this?
Yeah.
Are we going to open up the river for paddling? In what way, when and how, or not at all? And of course, cost will be one thing. That's why City Council asked us to pay for part of it. Without putting words in their mouths, the way I observed the conversation at the City Council level last year was that they liked the idea of paddling, but they didn't want to, the city has limited resources, so that's why they asked us to help to pay for the paddling study, the biologist study. And that'll be a concern again, that how much does it cost to implement this, if a change is possible?
I mean, certainly in the council sessions that I went to where this initial proposals about paddling were presented, there was a lot of community participation, a lot of people there, you know, people seemed to really enjoy the idea. And then, you know, we really do have to balance the impact on the habitat and preservation. And I know that people go to the Coastal Watershed Council website, and there's the link to the San Lorenzo River Alliance, and there you are talking about, you know, your goals, your objectives, you know, and you know, how much preservation, how much really bringing more focus, how much recreation. And I think they're realistic. The realistic goals you set say we want to do this 50% more publicity, you know, good publicity for the river. We want to have 50% more stories that say, yeah, the river's great, we should be doing more with it, you know. And that's balanced against the idea that we really do want to be sensitive to our biodiversity.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. I mean, if you only cared about flood control, you'd have a concrete channel. If you only cared about habitat, you'd get rid of the levees and let the river meander and have backwater eddies, off-channel pools and everything. If you only cared about public safety, you'd have lights and fences and cops everywhere. And that wouldn't feel very good, and we don't have the money. It's a balancing act of all those things. It really is. And recreation and habitat and are just in this conversation about whether we can have recreational use, paddling, is another example of that trade-off. It's a really urban river that's human influenced and affected. So we can't fool ourselves that it's a wild and scenic river that's natural, yet it is habitat for a lot of species. So how do we balance that?
And I get the feeling, looking at the websites and talking to you and just talking to people in the community about this, that there seems to be, from top to bottom in all these community partners, a great enthusiasm, you know, for this project to do something.
Right.
You know, and I think that's important, you know, that you have a lot of support. It's tempered by the things that we need to be mindful of course, but there's a lot of support.
Right, and that's one of the things, we don't claim to have all the answers. The Coastal Watershed Council is trying to show a leadership voice and being a convener. A lot of groups, we're trying to recognize that very many organizations have worked on this river for decades. So recognize that track record and that expertise and those successes and contribute what we can. One of the things we've been able to do is bring more of the business community into the conversation.
I was gonna ask
a lot of
about
business
that.
leaders in the Santa Cruz Rotary Club, and they have worked with us on an Adopt a Parklet program. The river,
Tell me about that.
Yeah, the Riverwalk's 2.5 miles from Highway 1 down to the boardwalk.
That's the Santa Cruz Riverwalk?
The Santa Cruz Riverwalk, 2.5 miles. And there is landscaping along that that is so-so aesthetically,
yeah.
and so you have the riparian area, and then outside of that you just have the
For
levee
people that
path,
don't understand the term riparian, it is,
the land right next to the river.
there you go, thank you very much.
So
Your host, of course, understood that.
of course you do. Thanks for the community education piece. We can't miss those opportunities.
Of course not. It's a great teaching moment. So anyway.
So if you can imagine a little portion of the park, you might call a parklet. And we have the Santa Cruz Rotary Club adopted one of those. And then we work with Ecological Concerns Incorporated, a restoration and ecology
That's terrific.
company,
Wow.
and work on designing and basically through creativity and sweat equity, pulling weeds and planting more native shrubs and plants and things like that. So it's native plants, so that's good for the food web. It's also prettier, and it's more aesthetic landscaping. And really it's about getting more organizations invested in the river. If you can imagine a company or a club like the Rotary Club, they had a team building day and they went out and they did that. Now
Is that the Sunrise Rotary?
Sunrise did the pump track.
Okay.
By the
Tell
county
me about
building.
that in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
And the Santa Cruz Rotary Club did an Adopt a Parklet right by CVS.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can see fresh mulch and fresh shrubs
Okay.
there. So you can imagine if a group did that, and Plantronics is in the middle of doing one right
Great
now.
community partner, I hasten to say.
They are.
Absolutely. Fantastic community partner.
And I've described them as a bookend of the lower river, the boardwalk at the
Yeah, you
bottom
did.
and Plantronics up
Yeah.
top. So that's what the Adopt a Parklet program is
Wow.
to have different groups come in, and now they get to put their stamp on the Riverwalk, and that is in partnership with city parks, because it's a city-owned property. It's a city park, and city parks staff are out there every day
Right.
managing
Sure.
vegetation and
Yeah.
cleaning things up, and they deserve a lot of credit.
Yep.
This Adopt a Parklet program is an opportunity for local companies or clubs to help, to get involved and play a role.
Wow. Now, is the Sunrise Rotary, now their program is a little different, you're saying?
That's a little different because they had the enthusiasm for a pump track, which I put my bike on the other day, and it's not fit for that, so I tried it out a little bit safely. And because we do one of the things that folks can see is that we do a newsletter down by the river every month, and we were down there filming that, so I saw the pump track and
Right.
tried it out briefly.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's just another example of more positive activity down
Yeah.
by the river, and the Rotary Club worked with city parks on that. It's
Yeah.
right by the county building.
Yeah. And I did notice, again, and we were looking at the website, that the Chamber of Commerce, and I guess the executive director, is Bill Tynesling still involved there? Is he, that they're involved in this? They're a community partner, and that's wonderful. I mean, that's the kind of thing, oftentimes when there's some community betterment, some community development project going on, you forget about the business interests for some reason. Either they're not consulted or they're not engaged, or, and I don't think it's for lack of them wanting to be. It's just simply for somebody saying, you know what, we're doing this terrific thing. How can you lend a hand? Would you like to be involved with this? Giving them an opportunity to contribute. Yeah.
We are giving them an opportunity, and my view is that, it's conventional wisdom that's false. To hear people say that there's a business community and then environmentalists. I mean, this is Santa Cruz, and we have a lot of business owners and business leaders, thought leaders, who are business-minded folks and love the environment.
Yeah.
They surf and they go to the beach and they bike or mountain bike, and maybe they are river enthusiasts.
Right.
And it's just an opportunity to broaden the conversation again. And that's also how you get things done.
Right.
They have
Yeah.
resources, creativity, and we can benefit from the way they successfully lead companies. It's true of the tech companies coming here as well. Santa Cruz is becoming the home of more and more entrepreneurs.
Wonderful, the Looker and all those
Yeah.
folks are in the building. I just saw an article on them the other day, and I said, that's terrific. That's the kind of thing that you want to encourage. But it's an interesting point that you make, that there are people who really have a crossover. They're business people, and they're also environmentalists, whatnot. But sometimes the connection isn't made, and I think when we're a stronger community when that connection is always made between people like that.
Yeah, and to broaden the conversation beyond the Coastal Watershed Council and the river, to broaden it, if you're a business person and you've come to live here, you care about the community, and you're right, I think they don't have opportunities. So the same brilliance and creativity and passion and drive that is helping them be really successful in that whatever company that is, they can help a nonprofit with that.
Yeah.
They can get involved with civic process, and that enriches their lives. They've come here for a reason. Increasingly, people like that can live wherever they want. Why did they come to Santa Cruz?
Right.
They can play a role in making Santa Cruz even better. Because it's a great place. We can all gush about how wonderful Santa Cruz is. We haven't fulfilled all of our potential. And when the full community is engaged on the river and on many other issues, we're better off for it, all of us.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I just heard something the other day about one of our national things is that we feel like, as much as we have done, we can always do better. There's always an opportunity to do better, to make your community better, to work better together, to do things in combination that make, the community more inclusive, diverse, and more enjoyable for everybody. But I will, again, hasten to say that while it's wonderful that all these various groups come together, it seems like the Coastal Watershed Council is taking a very strong leadership role in this, and I thank you for that, because your work should not go unrecognized, at least in my view. You've worked hard, you've been a leader on this, you actually have been somebody who has spoken out at council, you sit on the planning commission, you're actualizing a lot of this stuff, and the community has a lot of very able, creative people, a lot of dreamers, but we need people to get things done. And the way you get things done is, how you say, these collaborations, these partnerships.
Well, thank you for the recognition.
Yeah, well, it's well-deserved.
I appreciate that.
And sincere. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I feel that it's sincere.
Yeah.
And I also want to, without discounting it, share that I'm doing my part and trying to learn from all the hard work so many people that have done and are continuing to do. We have a great hardworking staff at the Coastal Watershed Council, lots of volunteers and donors and board members and partners that are doing great work, and it takes all of that.
And the donors, for any new donors who may be watching this program and be hearing this for the first time, my gosh, this sounds terrific, how can I contribute? They can do that by...
They can go to the Coastal Watershed Council website and they can donate online.
Yeah.
They can, there's information on how they could send a check to our office, but they could go to coastal-watershed.org and help us with a general donation. They could tell us that it could go to our citizen science monitoring programs, to our youth education programs, to our water tours, and also for the or to the paddling birding study that we talked about.
So on a personal level, certainly you have various and many duties as the Executive Director of Coastal Watershed Council. How much of your day is taken up kind of pushing these initiatives forward?
The river initiatives?
Yeah.
That's my job.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a small nonprofit, so as an Executive Director, we don't have an HR department. We don't have a finance department. We don't, have operations-focused staff. So my job includes those things: fundraising.
I did look on the website, and there weren't very many of you on there.
Right.
So doing a lot of really good work and a very few people. So
people say sometimes, "Oh, I do a little bit of everything," and sometimes some of us feel we're doing a lot of everything. We have a river scientist, an education and development manager, and then education coordinator, and then a technical director and some other contractors that are part-time, but 4 full-time staff. And we're really excited about how the community is receiving this approach and our renewed focus. We're still working on, still work with the city of Capitola on Selkell Creek and work with others on different watersheds. And we're investing as many resources as we can in the San Lorenzo River. We really feel like that we can hit a home run with this project.
I don't think there's any question about it. You feel like that there are more positive reports in the news and media and stuff about the Santa Cruz River Walk and the efforts to really bring that back as a live and vital part of the community?
Well, you mentioned the press, and you mentioned the goals that the San Lorenzo River Alliance has. One of them is River Talk, and River Talk includes measuring. I mean, how would you know if people are starting to believe in this thing? How would you know if people can feel it, if they're excited? That's a pretty hard thing. Everybody talks about measurable outcomes.
Of course. Yeah.
How would you measure that? And one tangible way, easy way to do that is to look at the press. So we are tracking positive and negative press mentions of the San Lorenzo River. So that in a year from now, in 3 years from now, in 5 years from now, can we demonstrate that the community, and as demonstrated in the press, that the community is more positive about the river, that a shift has happened from negativity and frustration and disdain or apathy, a shift from that to excitement and hope and positivity. And we are showing a shift in that already.
And I think, as with all things, that's changing the narrative about it.
Right.
There's been a narrative about the Santa Cruz Riverwalk for a long period of time, and the San Lorenzo River, for that matter, the river levee. Changing that narrative, I think, is a challenge.
Right.
You know, once that narrative is changed, people start to think about it in different terms.
And we're one of those many voices trying to make that more positive.
Yeah.
Another objective is something called river revelers. So you've got river talk.
I saw that on the bike alley.
Yeah.
I was hoping you'd say that because I am a reveler from way back. And I just wanted to know how I can be a river reveler.
So we define a reveler,
Easy for me to say.
a river reveler, as anyone doing something positive down by the river.
Yeah.
So our river scientist is here in the studio, Lev Bilgensoy.
Would you like to give her a little shout out?
Hey, Lev.
Yeah, welcome, welcome.
And she's leading a group of dedicated volunteers. Basically, we send people out there with a clipboard to, in an anonymous way, track who's doing what by the river.
Interesting.
Is there a mom with a stroller?
Yeah.
Is there a dad with his 2 or 3 kids?
Yeah.
Is there a couple of seniors? Is there a dog walker, a jogger, a biker? What's happening down at the river?
Right.
Again, it's about measurable outcomes. For a lot of people that we talk to in the community, when we say, I ask the question, how are we going to know if this is successful? And for a lot of people, they say more people at the river, more people doing positive things at the river, a different vibe and feel. And one of the ways we measure that is Riverwalk. It's called a Riverwalk usage study.
Wow.
And the city doesn't have any data on who's using that park for what.
Right.
So we're in our 2nd year of studying that, and that data was a major input. I don't know about major, but it was helpful input for the city in their master parks plan.
Right.
So we're out there tracking that as well. So we have river talk, river revelers, and then the third thing is river health, and that's the habitat and water quality that we've talked about.
Right. Yeah. And so the city is viewing the river revelers and the river talk and the data that you're collecting as reliable and indicative of the conversation changing, the narrative changing, that people's attitudes about the San Lorenzo River and the Santa Cruz Riverwalk are changing positively.
Right.
Yeah.
And the city's in a process, in the process of finalizing their master parks plan.
Yeah.
We have great parks here, and that plan will help guide our efforts to invest city resources on parks and rec for all the residents here.
Sure.
And the Riverwalk is a really long park right in this community, so it's a major one.
Well, I'm really delighted that the Santa Cruz City Council really is playing an important role in this because, this is our city. And these are the things that we want to build as a community. And as I say, be more inclusive and diverse, and this is really a wonderful way to do that. But I think, fundamentally for me, as somebody who works in various places in the community, a lot of times it is changing the narrative. It is, a different way of referring or thinking to something that really does, get it to a point where people say, you know what, I'm going to do what I can to help that, or I'm going to take a look at that myself, or I'm going to do something to, to see exactly what's going on there.
Well, it's too easy to stay home and stare at the TV or get frustrated and criticize. You're right. We try to give people some hope and not just hope, but a vision and some specific steps for how they get there.
Yeah.
People can give their time and volunteer. They can give their money and donate to the Coastal Watershed Council or other groups doing great work. And they can give their ideas and energy. What do you want along the Riverwalk? Where? How? What have you seen in other communities that has inspired you? Could we have that here? Are we smart enough? Do we have the creativity? Yeah, we have enough resources. But it is getting there and actually making tangible steps towards that future is what
Well, this has been fantastic, Greg. Thanks for being here and sharing your energy and your vision about the Santa Cruz Riverwalk. this is something I think that is going to be wonderful, for all of us in the community, and a lot of the good work is being done by the Coastal Watershed Council, so we appreciate it. Always a pleasure, my friend. We will see you around town in many places, and hopefully we'll have another conversation soon about the Santa Cruz River Walk, but thanks so much for being here and all of that great work.
You're welcome, and thank you for your work and helping our voice.
Yeah. Okay, this has been Steve Pleich. Thank you for watching this edition of Voices from the Village. Tune in a couple of weeks when we'll have another show, probably with somebody not quite as interesting as Greg, but we'll do what we can. But anyway, I've been Steve Pleich. Thanks to everybody behind the cameras in the studio and everybody here at CTV. We'll see you next time on Voices from the Village. Good night.